I recall back in the day, people wanted Sean Payton gone in New Orleans. Ooh, you better be careful what you wish for, baby. We'll talk about the Saints and Broncos going in different directions and more here at the Barbershop on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
She's exactly right. It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. Welcome to the new Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of our local experts that know your favorites like no one else. I am the host, the barber, Tony Wiggins, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Matt Williamson. Woo, we got some stuff to get into, and we're going to tell you exactly what that is right now. We're going to go around the league and let Matt choose the games like he always does. Does a lot better at that, by the way. Hot seat in Dallas. We know about that one, but Miami too. Let's talk about it, man. Can a quarterback mean that much to the whole thing? We're going to start, though, talking about Broncos and Saints headed in opposite directions, and the fun part of that is, well, the guy who's leading the Broncos was once leading the Saints. And Saints fans probably thought this was the best thing. Well, think again. All right, look, we appreciate you making us your first listen of the day and being an everyday here on Locked On NFL, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to tune in again. Monday morning, you'll hear the NFL's version of the Madman. That's right, Tyler Rowland. He has more NFL coverage for you every single Monday morning. Make sure you check that out. And today's episode is brought to you and sponsored by FanDuel. All you got to do is go over to America's #1 sports book and get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm going to start here with my brother, Matt Williamson, the Peacock and Williamson podcast, and the original, the OG host of the original Locked On NFL. I always bring that up. Matt, you saw last night, you saw about 3 years of questions come into, you got your answer. Saints wanted to move on because sometimes things get stale. Sean won a Super Bowl in Denver. I even picked it, and I'm going to apologize for the direction that it looked like he was headed with this team early in the year. Well, guess what? They're 4-3 now, and the Saints probably played the worst football that they've seen since Payton left last night.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to look at the Saints and be like, they only had 2 or 3 starters on offense. Yeah, that's terrible. That's really hard to overcome in a rookie quarterback in his second appearance. But the defense was terrible. And frankly, watching that game, I felt from the opening snap to the final snap that no one in the stadium thought the Saints could win, including the Saints, including their biggest fans. It just felt hopeless from the start. And I really think it's about time. I mean, they've kicked the can down the road year after year after year. And now I think it's time to pay the fiddler. I think you're going to see a new coach there. Guys like Kamara are, that were, standards for them, probably will be with other teams. Will Carr be back? I think you can even consider moving on from him, sending him somewhere else and just really blowing it up. Let's start with Payton, though. I mean, nobody knew what kind of environment he was walking into better than Payton. I mean, they're giving Breeze a jacket at halftime, and there's a lot of nostalgia in the air.
No doubt.
But maybe more importantly, he knows exactly how to attack that defense. I mean, just X's and O's wise, he had a massive advantage. And I do think the Broncos are pretty good on both lines of scrimmage. That D-line gets after it. I mean, Zach Allen is a really good player. Those edge guys are really good players. Their guards are good players. They got McGlinchey back. They're built on the lines. And I say this a lot. I mean, there aren't many human beings walking the earth that know how to win in the NFL. I mean, there might be 12 of them, and 4 of them are retired, and one's Bill Belichick in limbo, that really know how to win in the NFL. And one of them's the head coach of the Broncos.
Yep, you're exactly right. We're going to get to them in just a second. I want you to hear the misery, and not only who covers the Saints, that's Ross Jackson. I want you to hear the misery. You got to understand, Ross is New Orleans to the bone gristle, okay? Born, raised, lived, existed, understands New Orleans better than anybody. I want you to hear exactly. Listen to it in his voice, and I want you to see where he is when he says this last night.
In what might have been the absolute worst performance of the 2024 NFL season, the New Orleans Saints may be undergoing some changes. I'm Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast, walking through the bowels of the Superdome at the moment on my way to the Dennis Allen presser and post-game pressers and everything like that. And I can very much imagine that there are going to be a lot of question marks about Dennis Allen's future and sort of the future of this team and what they're going to look like in the not just coming weeks, but also, of course, their future this offseason. So this is just about as bad as it gets for an NFL team, and just about as bad a brand of football as we have seen from the New Orleans Saints in quite some time. An absolute drumming by the former head coach on a night where you're supposed to be honoring your future Hall of Fame quarterback. It just could not have gone worse for the New Orleans Saints, who also lost several key players to injury. A 10-33 drumming that felt like an 84-0 contest.
It had to hurt because Payton was the guy that gave them so much success, especially post-Katrina when that city needed it. But now he's coming back and he's giving them another dose of reality. This is what it was. This is what you got used to. This is who we used to be. And now I'm doing that with somebody else, and you ain't nothing nowhere near like you thought you used to be.
Yep. And Ross is one of the absolute best guys we have on the Locked On Network. Looking dapper there, by the way. And yeah, I agreed with everything he said. I mean, it is time to bottom out in New Orleans.
Yep. And listen to this. So I'm going to give you the flip side of it. This is after the game, too. These guys, they're in Denver. I'm talking about Sayre and my man Cody. They're not sitting there just resting on their laurels. They're trying to figure out now, okay, we're 4-3. How do we actually get better? And listen, they're going to talk about their quarterback, Bo Nix.
I really want to highlight, let's talk about Bo Nix. For the first time this season, a lot of people, maybe for the first time, were able to tune in to Bo Nix. And hey, early on, Sarah, it wasn't pretty. Like, there was some rough mechanical stuff there from Bo, specifically with footwork. I think right now, Bo's footwork is his biggest critique against him right now. There were times where, he had a clean pocket, missed some throws that were wide open, left a lot of yards and potential production out there on the field. But I will say later in the second quarter, he settled in, and in a way where, he wasn't necessarily going in rhythm in the first half in terms of the pass game. He contributed to the Broncos over 200 yards rushing in this win. He had a handful of yards, 75 on the ground himself on 10 rushing attempts.
You said it earlier, and I'm gonna. You always give me these little things that I don't know I'm gonna get. You said guys that know how to win, knowing how to win, and knowing how to use what you have to win.
Right.
Two very important things. This is the point guard for Sean Payton. This is a kid he's going to shape and mold in his own image, and I think he's off to a really, really good start. And you're going to see nothing but improvement from Bo Nix here on out.
I mean, I thought the Broncos were a bad team last year, and they had the Russell Wilson issues. They still won 8 games. You know what I mean? And he didn't get the quarterback he picked, and he had one more offseason to get one more lineman or two that he wanted, and those type of things. Again, you give him a bunch of random ingredients, he'll make something you can eat. If you let him pick some of the ingredients, it turns into a pretty good meal. And I agree with all the Nick stuff. That was definitely his best performance. I also thought, they mentioned the run game. That's the best Javonte Williams has looked since his injury, too. That's promising.
Yeah. All of these teams figuring out that you win the same way that you won 25, 30 years ago. Eventually, it was going to come back to blocking and tackling. Mm-hmm. Some teams don't make the right decisions. We're going to talk about them in just a second because it is the Dallas Cowboys. Payton was thought about as being their head coach at one point where he was out of coaching. Didn't happen. He was also talked about going to Miami. We're going to talk about two teams that have their coaches in the crosshairs right now because of two very, very different reasons in Dallas and Miami. And we'll get to that here in just a second on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Arena Club. Man, I hope y'all are collectors like me. And I hope you want the best that you can get in the car collection world. And then if you're like me, you also got to say, well, hold up now. I ain't got all that Elon Musk money, man. I got to really, really make sure I make the right selections. For most of us collecting cars, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on Luka or Ellie or Mahomes rookie card just isn't in the cards. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Well, Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent with a full grade rationale provided and your explanation of how your card was scored. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl and use the code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL, code LockedOnNFL for 10% off your first purchase. Today's show is also brought to you and sponsored by our friends over at Prize Picks, which is the #1 daily fantasy sports site in America. That's right. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars. You heard me. I said billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less than on 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season with Prize Picks, and here's how you do that. Go and download the Prize Picks app and then enter the code LockedOnNFL, all one word. I'll spell it, LOCKEDON NFL, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, use the code LockedOnNFL at Prize Picks to get $50 instantly after you play your first dollar lineup. More than or less than on player projections. Doesn't get any easier than that, and it's Prize Picks. All right, moving along here. Locked On NFL with my man Matt Williamson, our local expert on Locked On NFL, half of the members of the Peacock and Williamson podcast, and longtime NFL scout in the National Football League. Let's head now to Dallas, and I love talking about Dallas, especially when we're talking about a subject like Jerry. There are some people that believe, and Marcus Mosier and Landon McCool believe, that firing Mike McCarthy might not just be the only thing the Cowboys need. I want you to hear from them, Matt, and then I want to see and get your opinion on it.
I also think, whatever you think about Mike McCarthy, I think there's no doubt you can say at least he's a somewhat good head coach, right? Like, you don't win a Super Bowl and then stumble into 3 straight 12-plus win seasons if you're not at least adequate coach, right? Sure, so yeah. There is at least a level of, I think there's a chance that he could get things back to.
I think that's possible too.
Right.
Yes,
like, he figures things out. The offense starts to play better after the bye, like we saw last year, and things start to get going. Like, I do think he's still a good NFL coach. Now, he might not be the right coach for the Cowboys right now, but I do think he's a good coach. So there's the benefit there. I also just don't see how firing Mike McCarthy is suddenly going to make your defensive ends healthier. It make your defensive tackles hold up against double teams better. It make your corners all of a sudden get healthier too. Like, firing Mike McCarthy isn't this great elixir to everybody else getting healthy and doing their jobs better at the same time either.
Matt, maybe the worst thing that happened to Dallas 31 years ago was firing Jimmy Johnson, and then 2 years later winning a Super Bowl with Barry Switzer, because it made Jerry think that Jimmy wasn't the one that built those teams. Right. You talk about a 3-year regret with the Saints and Sean Payton leaving. The Cowboys have a 31-year regret with letting Jimmy Johnson go.
I wonder if they turned to Belichick like they did Parcells. You know what I mean? But I also wonder, with all respect, I have great respect for Al Davis. I mean, he helped build this league.
Absolutely.
But the last 10 years he was on the planet, he hurt the Raiders. And nobody's going to tell Al Davis no. Is that what we're starting to see in Dallas? You know, like, this is a big-time guy that I think is a detriment to winning in the league. The owner, I mean, his own radio show, and people ask, no one does that in most towns, like, I think it's hard to win with how that organization is constructed from the top down. I also, one thing I want to give the Joneses, him and his son, some credit for, is I was told they were reluctant to give Dak and Lamb and Parsons those huge contracts that have come or are coming, because the last time we saw them on the field last year was one of the worst losses in Dallas Cowboy history. I mean, they got embarrassed, and now you're rewarding people after that with huge contracts. Like, you can see where that doesn't sit right, And all of a sudden, they've kind of become a stars and scrubs roster. So a couple injuries, like Marcus mentioned, and you're shot. And, we just talked about Denver. Denver's running the ball better. They're good on both lines of scrimmage. But Dallas doesn't run the ball well, and they don't stop the run.
Let me go into your world real quick, because I don't want to sit here and sound like I am going to sound like I know what I'm talking about, because I've talked to people. But since you are the scout, you've done this for a living. There's a difference between a scout standing on the table for talented players and team building, right?
Right.
So Jerry and his son, they have drafted very, very well. When you consider the dudes, their hit rate on guys that turn out to be outstanding football players is really, really high.
Yeah.
But so it's hard to tell a dude that does that he's not doing a real good job of team building.
Yeah.
What is the dynamic between those two entities that could really help Dallas from your experience?
So I do think there's a lot, and this is a lot of my Pittsburgh roots, and I very much think this was a Belichick thing. Belichick was not a good drafter, but he knew the pieces he needed, to take a safety in the second round that everyone else had a fifth round grade on, but he does the one thing I needed. I think this is more of a fantasy football build, but I also am really glad you brought up their drafting history, because I was going to, because if you draft well, you should be a good team. I mean, I do think that over the years, they have rewarded some of their own players with too big of contracts too early. But that's not the worst problem to have, that I got too many good players and I'm giving them too much money. You know what I mean? And I do think it has to come down to culture. I also think, we'll talk about this a bunch, but playoff wins are hard to come by. You know what I mean? I think there's 13 playoff wins given out every year. And the Super Bowl champ has 3 or 4 of them. The Super Bowl runner-up has 2 or 3 of them. It just doesn't leave many. You're 0 for 2 in the playoffs. Yeah, because you lost to a good team. Trust me, I'm dealing with that in Pittsburgh here heavy. We got all these Super Bowls, but they haven't won a playoff game in 8 years or whatever. I'm like, yeah, because it's really hard. It
is.
They're going. They're just not getting over the hump.
Yeah,
and they're at a down point right now.
Yeah, they are at a down point. They're really an owner-centric team. The Miami Dolphins are a quarterback-centric team. I love when you want to find out. I love a culture-centric team. I love how certain New England and Pittsburgh and Kansas City, no matter how good the players are, everything doesn't fall apart with one player missing. Now, most teams don't do well when they miss their quarterback. The Miami Dolphins look like a totally different team without their starter, and that's why I said they may have committed malpractice by not having a better backup or somebody like a Joe Flacco that can get you through, even a Jameis Winston type. But there's something else that even when they're healthy, they don't beat really, really good teams and really, really physical teams. And now people are starting to question Mike McDaniel. I want you to check this exchange out real quick. It's from a crossover, but I want you to hear how Kyle Krabs talks about the Miami Dolphins.
The Colts are on pace to welcome back their young star quarterback against the Dolphins this weekend, but can Miami's own backup quarterback make enough plays against Indy's banged-up defense to steal the win?
Yeah, Miami definitely has embodied the 3-year cliche Mike McDaniel likes to throw around of adversity being opportunity. And we kind of got to the 3rd, 4th week of the season and said, no more opportunity, please. We have all the adversity that we need here. The starting quarterback's on injured reserve. This is the last week for Tua for a minimum from an injured reserve perspective. Mike McDaniel said Tyler Huntley really didn't go away during the bye week just because of stylistically how different the core principles are of their passing offense versus a lot of things that he's done. And I think that puts it into context for a team that averaged over 35 points through the first 6 weeks of the season last year is dead last in the league in scoring offense. And they got about 7 quarters of play from Tua Tagovailoa. So that's definitely been kind of the main central focus for Miami. And there was some reason for optimism coming out of the game against the Patriots, where they ran the ball for almost 200 yards. The big question right now, and I know the Colts have their own respective questions with the run defense with some of the games that they've played this season, but that's the big thing for Miami is can you take that and start to apply that in a week-to-week formula?
People will get mad at you real quick when things go opposite. And believe it or not, Mike McDaniel was the golden child of the NFL just last year. But now people are really, really starting to question the big picture approach that he has when it comes to the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, and I have all off season, to be honest with you. I mean, that's a unique division because there's 3 cold weather teams and the hottest weather team in the league.
Wow.
So early in the season, they have an advantage over their division and the rest of the league. But as the weather changes, that drastically changes against them. And we've seen that team when they're humming and Tua's healthy and Tyreek's awesome. As the season goes on, they wear down. That doesn't fly anymore, and their team build worries me because even like this past draft, we drafted another running back that runs a good 40. They drafted 2 more receivers that run a good 40 that are undersized. Draft a guard. You know what I mean? Like, give me a 320-pound guard so I can go to New England and New York and Buffalo in December and run the football. And give me a heavier back. And they have too many Ferraris. And they need a dump truck.
There you go.
Ferraris break down a lot, man.
Matt just hit you with a Wigism, baby. We got too many Ferraris and they need a dump truck. I love it. I love it. But you're right, man. At some point, you got to be able to punch people in the mouth, man. You can't run around. My football coach called it Ole. When those linebackers see those linemen coming and they go around them, he said that's like you holding the bullfighter holding the red thing and just go. You got to take that on. You don't run around him. You just created a lane for you want to go over there? Fine. The running back goes the other way. No, you got to smash that. You got to take that on. And I don't think they have a lot of physical people on that football team. They have a lot of Ferraris and no dump truck. You need dirty dump trucks. That's right. I tell you what, the Giants traded they got rid of a dirty dump truck. And if we're going to whip around the league, but we're going to start with something that I love, and people in barbershop love this stuff too. Revenge. There ain't nothing sweeter than a little bit of revenge. Saquon Barkley has that on his mind. We'll discuss that, and Matt will pick all the games in the third and final segment here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel, man. America's #1 sports book. Why is that so important? Well, because if you're going to be dancing around with a sports book, you might as well go to the #1 sports book, and that is FanDuel. When you get started, they're going to give you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you placed your first $5 bet. I didn't say you had to win. I said you had to place your first $5 bet, and voila, $200 in bonus bets. You only get that at the best, man. You don't get that anywhere else. And when you make your bets, guess what? You don't even have to change pages. I know if you're sitting in the stadium somewhere or a sports bar and the Wi-Fi is all sketchy, you're trying to get from page to page, check out your fantasy stats, trying to check out the play-by-play to see if you're going to actually hit your little parlays because of the point spread. You can stay right on the same page where you make your bets. You don't have to keep changing around because that's what FanDuel does, man. It's America's #1 sports book. And I'm going to tell you right now, remember, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. Make sure if anybody asks you, you tell them Locked On sent you to America's #1 sports book. That is FanDuel. All right, moving along here, moving fast too, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to move fast and furious through all of these games and let Matt lead you. You don't want me leading you because I keep getting them wrong. But I will say this. There's one game that just gets me going, man, because I love redemption stories. Sean Payton did it a little bit last night, even though I think it was more mutual that he left New Orleans and just to get off to a good start. It's not like they just kicked him out of there. Well, Saquon Barkley kind of got he wanted to stay in New York, and they let him go. And guess where he went? He went to their route. And I just think back to Tom Coughlin telling people back in the day not to punt the ball to Deshaun Jackson. They punted the ball to Deshaun Jackson, and he ran a touchdown back on the punt return. Revenge. We'll talk Saquon Barkley going back to the Giants. But from a scout standpoint and a guy like me that really loves rookie matchups, and things that you wanted to see, I think Malik Nabers is going to play. My favorite corner in the draft was Quinyon Mitchell. Guess what? They get it on right now. And I know there's a lot of people from the Senior Bowl. There's a lot of people from around the league, scouts, that might be watching their own situation, but they're going to be looking at those two rookies go head-to-head too. Let's talk about that a little bit. Listen to Lou DiBiase.
Quinyon versus Nabers, that's going to be a fun matchup. Potentially the best rookie receiver of this class against the best rookie corner of this class. And Quinyon is having a year. I think right now he should be the defensive rookie of the year favorite. Look at these numbers. 8 forced incompletions. This year is tied for third in the entire NFL. His forced incompletion rate of 30% is first in the league. His 48.3 passer rating allowed. It's the second lowest rating that a rookie has allowed through his first 5 games since 2018. The only guy that had a better start to his career in that way was Jalen Johnson of the Chicago Bears. Quinyon Mitchell versus Malik Nabers. I mean, this is going to be a great matchup.
I agree. And I'm going to be honest here. I'm going to tell you right now, the Jaguars took Brian Thomas Jr. I'm very happy. And by the way, Brian Thomas Jr. would argue that he's just as good as Malik Nabers, his former college running mate. But the Jaguars are going to take a corner. Trent Baalke told me with his own mouth after the draft, they were going to take a corner. Most people believe that that was Terrion Arnold, who's also playing well. My favorite DB in this draft, and I'm on record with these podcasts on Locked On Jaguars saying Quinyon Mitchell, if y'all go corner, that has to be the dude. I love that kid, and I love both of these dudes. That's going to be a good matchup for a dude like you that scouts, and you're like, okay, let's see it. Let's see it.
Oh, yeah. No question. I mean, I am psyched about that. Mitchell has been phenomenal. I was also high on him, and this isn't a knock on him. I think Nabers is special. I don't throw that word around very often.
Yeah.
I mean, Mitchell's a really good player. Great. They're thrilled with him. The Jags have been thrilled with him. I think Nabers is special. And what worries me from a Giants perspective, though, is they just lost Andrew Thomas. You know, they used to leave him on islands, and that made the rest of the O-line click. But I also think their D-line and their pressure rate is about as good as any in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I think they keep this thing close. I think the Giants are a little bit better team than people want to give them credit for.
I do too, man. And we can't leave this game without talking about Saquon Barkley. And the things over the years where the Giants, remember Tom Coughlin told they were playing the Eagles, said, don't punt it. Don't punt this ball to Deshaun Jackson. At the end of the game, they punted it to him. He dropped it, picked it up, and ran a touchdown. And it's like these games go back to Herm Edwards, right? Scooping up Pasarchi. These Eagles and Giant games come down to this. And now you got another little thing, and that's Saquon. Saquon's going to do them, boys. I think Saquon Barkley's going to have a monster game against his former team.
It wouldn't shock me at all. I mean, he's a special talent as well. He's a good O-line behind him. I do like that front for the Giants, but this one's going to be obviously on the on the calendar for a long time for Barkley here.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to do it from in the backfield. He can also do that catching the ball out of the backfield. Let's do a quick whip around the National Football League. We're going to London at 9:30 in the morning. New England versus the Jags.
You know this one better than I do. I really am excited about Drake May, but I think he's got you and I and some other Locked On hosts blocking for him right now. I mean, I don't even know some of the linemen they have going. And you know, again, the Jacksonville London thing I think is real, and that they also, you know, the fact that they've spent time there and they're not just flying over now is a huge advantage. But Wig, I also think that watching them last Sunday morning, they kind of had that Saints feel that we opened the show about. Like, It seems hopeless, and every time something good happens, like Lawrence played well in that game, but it felt like he was playing against 21 players as opposed to 11. Like everybody,
that's the way that's exactly the way their season has gone. Interesting game. Seattle at Atlanta.
I like where the Falcons are at, and Seattle's kind of trending the wrong way. Long road trip. I'm going to take the Falcons there.
Tennessee at Buffalo seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think Buffalo. Looks like Cooper's going to play. That's exactly what they need. I think they get that win pretty easily.
The battle in Northeast Ohio, Cincinnati versus Cleveland.
I can't bet on the Browns. I mean, their offense is so bad. And
I like how your inflection of your voice changed, man.
Oh, man. The Watson situation's too miserable for me.
Yeah, one of the games of the week and one that I will watch intently, especially since the Jaguars play early enough for me to pay attention to other games. Houston at Green Bay.
Yeah, I don't have a strong feel about this one, but I think the Packers are playing extremely well and have fewer weaknesses at home. I like Green Bay, but man, there's like 4 or 5 really good games this week.
Yep, Houston, this is where I think they miss Nico Collins when they play against another really, really good team. We talked about the Dolphins. They should get a win, but you never know. They're going to Indy, and I think Indy's going to play the kid, Richardson, at quarterback.
I still like the Colts. I just think they're better at the line of scrimmage. I think they'll run the ball even without Taylor. Again, too many Ferraris.
Yep, too many Ferraris. I'm going to skip this other game because that's the game of the week to me. Let me go. We talked about Philly and New York. We've already given our sort of predictions. I think we're going to go with the Eagles on that one. Vegas versus the Los Angeles Rams.
I don't like where Vegas is at all. I studied them heavily before the Steelers played them, and then watching them intently, they're a pretty bad football team.
Bad team, play hard, and that's admirable, but you got to do more than play hard. You actually got to have talent. Carolina has looked a little bit better with the Red Rocket at quarterback, but they go to Washington.
Yeah, I don't think they can keep up with Washington's offense.
Neither do I. Really good game there. I'll get back to that. Let me go with your Pittsburgh Steelers with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams coming to town. The Steelers making a QB change on Sunday night.
It's going to be a really cool environment. I mean, night games here are always fun, but it's a 50th anniversary of their Super Bowl IX team. They're going to wear those jerseys with the gray face masks, and there'll be a bunch of old Steelers in attendance, and Rodgers and Devontae Adams and Wilson. I think the Jets are just a desperate team right now. 0-3 and haven't made the playoffs in 13 years. I think they win this game and kind of go on a little bit of a run here.
Okay, there you go. I'm going to get to the Monday matchups. We have a dual Monday night matchup again. Harbaugh and the Fighting Chargers going to Arizona.
I don't like the direction Arizona's been going lately. Their defense just lacks talent, and I absolutely think Harbaugh is one of those 12 coaches that knows how to win in the league.
As much as I like Monty Ossenfort, I agree with you. Really good game. Baltimore at Tampa on Monday night.
Yeah, it is a really good game because the weakness of Baltimore right now is their pass defense, and Mayfield and Godwin and Evans are dangerous that way. I mean, they absolutely are, and maybe Vita Vea can actually slow down Henry in that run game. I think Baltimore's the best team in the league right now, though. I'm going to take the Ravens.
Yep, but that's a lot. You just made a point. This is a lot of stuff to look forward to. It is force against force. All right, let's get to the two real good games on Sunday. Kansas City going to the Bay Area to play the 49ers.
Ooh, I got to give this one some more thought because, man.
I tried to give you time, man. I tried to give you time, man.
And I'm going to be recording with Peacock here, and he's going to be 49ering me to death any minute. Give me the Chiefs. Again, I don't feel strong. This is a get your popcorn and just watch it type of game.
Get your popcorn and get ready. All right, we all might have to tape up for this one. We all might have to put a helmet on and put some Bengay on for this physical AFC North matchup between the Detroit Lions and the undefeated Minnesota Vikings.
Another great one, and you give Flores an extra week to prepare, and the Hutchinson injury. But I'm going to take the Lions. I think they're the better football team. I think they rival the Ravens as the best team in the league right now. Their O-line can handle this situation, you know?
Yeah. And then they got a receiver that plays like an O-lineman in Amon St. Brown. Yeah, he is Hines Ward. He is Anquan Bolden. He is Steve Smith. He is cut from that cloth, man. And when you get a dude like that, he really, really personifies that entire team. All right, Matt, good whip around the league. It's going to be very interesting. The content will create itself this Sunday because you got revenge factors. You got all kinds of stuff. Great on you joining us, and y'all can make sure y'all check out Locked On NFL every single day. You get a double dose. Tyler Rowland in the morning and the barbershop in the afternoon. You get the Madman and the laid-back barber twice a day on Locked On NFL, something that Matt helped create, and we will always be very, very grateful for that. Great football weekend. You guys have a good weekend. Take care of each other. Keep each other safe. Matt will be back with us next Friday. Y'all make sure y'all take care of each other, and we'll do the same.